Okay, here is chapter 10 of I Am Malala. It's 2008, What Terrorism Feels Like. So we know the last chapter, it was called Candy from the Sky. However, it really wasn't as sunny of a chapter as the title makes it sound. The army came, they dropped candy to the kids, and the kids all were like, oh good, thank goodness the army's here, they're going to make everything better. And instead, the Taliban just kind of got stronger, and there were blasts every night for a year and a half. So every night they were sleeping in their house, and there were literally bombs blasting, machine guns right outside their door. Their power would go off. They would all sleep in one room, huddled together. I mean, doing that one night sounds horrific. Doing that multiple nights in a row, I just can't even imagine. So, it says, the last sentence, or the last couple sentences here says, one day my prayer was answered. The army hadn't won, but it had at least driven the Taliban into hiding, if not away. So we'll start chapter 10. Somehow daily life continued despite the bomb blasts and killings. School remained a haven from the insanity of a city in the middle of a war. It wasn't always possible to attend between the bomb blasts and the curfew, which could be enforced any time of day, and sometimes noisy helicopters flying overhead made it so we couldn't hear a thing, and on those days we would be sent home. But if the school opened its doors, I was there, ready to spend time with my friends and learn from the teachers. My friends and I had now moved to the upper school, and our friendly competition got even more competitive. We didn't just want to get good grades. We wanted to get top grades. It wasn't just that we wanted to be the best, although we each enjoyed it when we were. It was because our teachers, like Miss Olfat in primary school, said excellent or well done. Our hearts would fly, because when a teacher appreciates you, you think, I am something. In a society where people believe girls are weak and not capable of anything except cooking and cleaning, you think, I have a talent. When a teacher tells you all great leaders and scientists were once children too, you think, maybe we can be the great ones tomorrow. In a country where so many people consider it a waste to send girls to school, it is a teacher who helps you believe in your dreams. And I found a great new teacher in our upper school headmistress, Madame Miriam. She was bright and independent, everything I wanted to be. She had been to college. She had a job earning her own wage. Now that we were in upper school, the subjects became more difficult. We took algebra, chemistry, and, my favorite, physics. And even though our teachers had only a blackboard and chalk, we were free to go as far as our curiosity would take us. When we were learning about chemistry, one girl stopped the class to ask a question. If everything is made up of atoms, what are atoms made of? Another asked, if electrons are constantly moving, why isn't this chair I'm sitting on moving? The teacher put aside the day's lesson plan, and we all asked questions to our heart's content. But mostly, we talked about those days, what we talked about those days was the army and the Taliban. All the people of SWAT were caught in the middle. One friend used to like to annoy me by saying, Taliban is good, army not good, and I would always reply, when you are caught between military and militants, there is no good. The trips from school had become tense and frightening, and I just wanted to relax once I was safe inside my home. One day I arrived ahead of my brothers, thrilled I didn't have to fight with Kashal for the remote for once, and settled in to watch a new favorite show, Shararat, which means making mischief. It was just a Bollywood comedy, but I loved it. I turned on the TV, and all I got was static. I switched stations, more static. I tried every station, nothing but static. At first, I thought it was another annoying power outage. We'd been having them every day. But that night, we found out that Fazula's men had switched off all the cable channels. They said that TV was harem. It showed what the westernized world where women have love affairs and do not cover their hair, with nothing left to watch but the government television channel. We were all but cut off from the outside world. Fazula, meanwhile, kept broadcasting his sermons. Girls should stay at home, he preached. We did our best to ignore him, until the day I came home to find my father with his head in his hands. "Oh, Johnny," he said, "the world has gone mad. Fazula and his men have blown up the girls' school in Matta." My heart dropped. The school Fazula had destroyed was a primary school, not even a school that taught teenagers. He had bombed the school at night when it was empty, but how cruel this man was, hurling fire bombs at a place where little children wanted only to learn to read and write and add. Why, I wondered, why was a school building such a threat to the Taliban? All right, I'm going to pause for a second. Think about that for a minute. Why is a school such a threat? The schools aren't fighting back against them. They're not doing anything, in a way to kind of educate them to be against the Taliban. They're just educating. So think in your heads, why would the Taliban be against a school? Something to think about is the more educated you are, the more questions you ask. Just like Malala had said, that Madame Mariam she loved when the girls would ask questions and wonder things and all of that. And the more you know, the more you question. And so if these girls have an education, they're not just going to be like, oh, okay, you don't want us to go out? Fine, we won't go out. You want us to cover our hair? Okay, we'll do that. They're more likely to listen to those demands and not question them. But an educated person might say, wait a second, why do you want us to cover our hair? And start asking questions. So you see here, the Taliban knows that education truly is a powerful weapon. And that's why they're getting rid of schools. So that's an interesting thing, isn't it? So why was a school building such a threat to the Taliban? I whispered a quick prayer for the children who'd lost their school and another to protect the Kashal school. Please, God, I prayed, help us to protect our valley and to stop this violence. Every day, Fazula's men struck a new target: stores, roads, bridges, and schools. Most of the attacks were outside Mignora, but soon they got closer and closer. One day I was in the kitchen cleaning dishes despite my best efforts to avoid them, and a bomb went off so close that the whole house rattled and the fan over my head fell. Before I could even react, the power went out. I learned that was how it happened. Bomb, then darkness. The Taliban bombed us, and then the power went out for an hour at least. A few days later, the Taliban struck again. A funeral for one of the victims of their last attack was being held in a nearby building. As the mourners gathered to pay their respects, a suicide bomber blasted himself. More than 55 people were killed, including members of Moniba's family. This concept, guys, might be new, suicide bomber, for some of you. What these Taliban guys would do, and some of these extremists, they will strap their bodies with bombs, and they'll walk into a crowded place and they'll blow themselves up. And it's called a suicide bomb because they believe that it is actually pleasing to God when they kill people who don't believe the way that they do. So they're getting rid of people, and they believe that when they get to heaven, they're going to be very rewarded and God is going to be very proud of them. So it's hard for us with rational minds to understand how anyone could believe something like this. But that is what they truly believe. So they would strap themselves with bombs, go to a crowded place where no one was suspecting it, and blow themselves up. And it still happens. If you listen to the news, you'll hear it periodically. It usually is overseas where people, you'll hear of a suicide bomber. And like I said, hard to understand how anybody could get to the point where they would think that would be okay, and especially pleasing to God. But that is what they believe. So, yeah, that's why a lot of people, and even people, get a bad vibe with Muslims, but it's because of people like the Taliban and the terrorists, because we can see very plainly Malala's family doesn't follow those traditions. So it is not all Muslims. It is that branch of like the crazies. So more than 55 people were killed, including members of Moniba's family. I had grown up hearing the word terrorism, but I never really understood what it meant until now. Terrorism is different from war, where soldiers face one another in battle. Terrorism is fear all around you. It is going to sleep at night and not knowing what horrors the next day will bring. It is huddling with your family in the centermost room in your home because you've all decided it's the safest place to be. It is walking down your street and not knowing whom you can trust. Terrorism is the fear that when your father walks out of the door in the morning, he won't come back at night. Now the enemy was everywhere, and the attacks came out of nowhere. One day a store was destroyed, the next day a house. Rumors flew. The store owner crossed Fazula and had helped the army. The man whose house was targeted was a political activist. A bridge was blown up one day, a school the next. No place was safe. No one was safe. Our family tried to carry on as normal, but we were tense all the time. Bombings became such a regular part of our daily lives that we fell into a routine every time we heard a blast. We called to one another to make sure everyone was safe. Kahista, Pisho, Bobby, Kashal, Atal, we cried. Then we listened for the sirens, then we prayed. This kind of random terror made us do strange things. My father started taking a different route home each evening in case someone was studying his routine. My mother avoided the market, and my brothers stayed inside even on the sunniest days. And since I had been in the kitchen both times there were blasts near our house, I stayed as far away from that room as possible. But how can a person live when she is afraid of a room in her own home? How can a mother buy food for her family if the market is a war zone? How can children gather for a game of cricket if a bomb could go off under their feet? Nighttime was the worst. When darkness fell, we all startled at every creak and jumped at every shadow. Nighttime was when Fazula's men carried out most of their attacks, especially the destruction of schools. So every morning, before I rounded the corner on the way to the Kashal school, I closed my eyes and said a prayer, afraid to open them in case the school had been reduced to rubble overnight. This was what terrorism felt like. In 2008 alone, the Taliban bombed 200 schools. Suicide bombings and targeted killings were regular occurrences. Music shops closed. Daughters and sisters were prevented from going to school during the month of Ramadan. We had no power or gas in Magnora because Fazula's men had blasted the electricity grid and the gas line. One night, when a blast hit especially close to our home, I went to my father's side. "Are you scared now?" I asked. "At night, our fear is strong, Johnny," he said. "But in the morning and the light, we find our courage again." I like that line. I feel like that's so true for all of us. When we're having a bad day and it's nighttime and we're tired and it's dark, it always feels the worst at night, doesn't it? So I like that line. "At night our fear is strong, Johnny," he said. "But in the morning, in the light, we find our courage again." And that is so true. So that is where we'll end chapter 10, which is actually the end of part 2 as well. So I will do another recording to get part 3 kicked off for you.